So you just did a rebrand and it looks awesome. Are you so excited?
I am so excited. If this is what my clients feel like every time they get a new brand done, I'm like, I get excited when they have a brand done. It is next level when it's your own, I think.
Yeah, it's like it's exciting and it's calming at the same time. It feels so good to
Yeah.
have that clarity. So how long have you been in business now?
Well, I was full-time into business in 2019. So we've been running at our, well, we had been running under our current name for about 5 years.
Yeah.
We started this back, or like I started it back in 2017. Is when I first like took on my first clients on the side. And then, yes, now we literally last week we rebranded to Explora Creative.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
great. So tell me a little bit about how this came about where you were like, okay, we need a new name. I'm kind of moving into a new brand. What went into uh the deciding to move in this direction?
Hmm. Well, the rebrand has probably been 2 years in the works. Like, let's get serious about that. I think 2 years ago, I had been operating under Jodi Toews Design. And I was like, I'm starting to bring on team members. So my husband also, he works as our web developer. And so he all of a sudden had his own email address. I think this was 2 years ago. He had his own email address and it was like Krister at joditoews.ca. And I'm like, this just feels like so many names, A. And it just felt really awkward having someone else operating under my business name, like under my name,
Yeah.
essentially. And so that was, yeah, that was 2 years ago, which is kind of funny. It took that
Yeah.
long. Um, and then kind of like it was on the back burner for 2 years. And then this year, I really was like, okay, the thing that's holding me back from this rebrand is actually a name. I'm like, if I could figure out what my new name is going to be, that would really allow me to like move forward with rebranding and just like get focused and get clear and just level things up. And so that's where I started putting my energy was actually into the name itself.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a hard thing. I feel like especially when you're first starting out, like I started as Jess Hershey LLC,
Yeah.
because you go to start a business and you have a thing you want to do and you know you need a name, but like to come up with a name before you have your business rolling, before you know and really understand who you work with and you get a good groove with your work, it's just like, well, I guess I'll just be my name and you put it up there. Then, like you said, I had the
Yeah.
exact same experience where I grew into a team and I was like, this does not make sense. So I feel like that is a really common journey. And honestly, for me, coming up with a name partway into my business produced such a more aligned result than if I would have come up with one from the beginning, probably. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
happy for the process. But tell me a little bit about like thinking about a name when you do get to that point, whether it's in the beginning or a little further on, that feels like a big thing. And I feel like there's a lot of things that pull you in different directions. How did you go about thinking about your name and kind of arriving on what you did?
Yeah, I would not say it was pretty chaotic and not overly formalized in terms of a structure for coming up with your name. If you're an agency that maybe does like brand names, you'd probably be like going like this, like, oh my gosh, no, don't listen to this process for coming up with a name. But really, I started looking at like what we stood for as a studio. I knew that I wanted to be called a studio, so for us, I was like, I want I want this to be like this like small, tight knit little team essentially of like maybe 3 to 5 people. I really thought about having studio in the name initially. Um, and then the studio is maybe a little bit too broad, so studio eventually got kind of got shucked because it could be a fitness studio, it could be a dance studio. Like studio didn't quite seem specific enough,
Mhm.
um, but that was maybe part of our description. And then for the actual like main part of it, I really looked at like what kind of results we were getting for our clients, like what we valued, just like the overall vibe, which again is very generic, but like the vibe is just like, well, how do you want it to sound? Like there's something about like sounds, like do you want it to be harsh? Do you want it to be soft? Do you want it to be masculine? Do you want it to be feminine? Like what kind of word is this going to be? How do you want to spell it? I looked at like mashing things together. I did read a book. It was called, I think it was called Pop, and it had some really interesting ways of like kind of going through the naming process and like questions to ask, which was great. Um, I definitely used Chat GPT and like AI tools. And honestly, because I went through the exercise of like, what do we stand for? Like, I was already thinking about these things because you have business, like years of business under your belt. I could start to kind of feed that stuff into Chat GPT and be like, okay, what names would you come up with? It came up with nothing good. But it was brainstorming. Like it was just this huge, big process of brainstorming. And it was really trying not to like nip anything in the bud too early, just kind of like let things sit. And if there was anything that like kind of caught my attention or I felt at all like drawn to, or I was like, oh, this maybe matches kind of like what I want us to be known for or what we're about, then I would just like I would jot it down in a notebook. And so it was probably like 6 months of that, or like jotting names down in a notebook, leaving them, coming back to them as I had time. And then through, the rabbit hole that is the internet, I found this AI brand name generator. I couldn't even tell you the company that like the company that runs it. I have it bookmarked somewhere on my computer because it was actually really helpful. But it spit out the word Explora, and it as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's going in the book.
Mhm.
And then I started talking about that name with people as well. So I just like my circle, I was like, hey, like, how does this land for you? Because I wanted feedback of it's great if I like it, but also it needs to translate and be received well by other people as well. And so I started to kind of throw out some names, like say them out loud, see how it felt for me to say it, how other people reacted to it. And then I had another really wise friend who was like, you should write that down. Just write it down. Don't stylize it. Like, don't think anything about like logo. She was very clear, like, don't stylize it. Just like write it down on a piece of paper and then put it up in your house in like a few different spots. And so that's what I did. I had Explora Creative. It sat like littered around our house for about 2 weeks because I wasn't totally sold on it initially, but I was like, oh, I think this is the front runner. But I wasn't sure. And yeah, after the 2 weeks, I was like, no, this is definitely like this is it. It feels good. And then you go through the registration process and yada yada. So
Love
that's a
that.
very long-winded answer, but it was a lot of like sitting with it, talking to people about it, and just letting it like simmer on the back burner. Seeing
Yeah.
it was really helpful.
That
Sounds
is
so
that
funny.
is that's a great tip. I wouldn't have thought
Yeah.
about that, but I think there's just a component to this, like you talked about it representing your values and there's emotion in it. How do you want it to feel? And when you dive into names to that extent, you can get your perspective can get really lost. And so being able to take time and let it sit and then come back and see how it feels in your body, what kind of response that you have, that feels like a really helpful process. And I love all of the collaboration and all the different tools that you tried to kind of bring this to life. I think good ideas take a lot of time. So I feel like that, and it clearly produced great results for you.
Yeah, once I had the name, then the visual piece and even just going through, I took myself through our own branding process. Um, I was a little bit concerned that I'd be too close to it
Yeah.
because it's like kind of like your baby when it's your business. I was a little bit concerned that like it's notoriously hard for designers to create their own brand and design for themselves. And so I was pretty concerned going into the process that it was going to be tedious and frustrating and awful. And not to say that there weren't moments where I was a bit frustrated or did feel a bit tedious, but overall, it was actually the process itself was just, it was so good. It was so good to write things down, ask myself questions that I asked my clients, even create resources that I create for my clients, I created for us as well, because I'm like, well, this is really valuable. So
Yeah.
like having things that I can, shortcuts to my brand strategy. I now have shortcuts. I do not like having a cluttered desktop. Um, but I have shortcuts now to my brand strategy on my computer because it's so nice to be able to access it, just to make sure that I'm staying on track and I'm not becoming murky.
Yeah.
Just having something to come back to and look at.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I think that it's such a valuable process to be able to go through and get that clarity. And when you were talking about the the struggles of doing your own brand that could potentially crop up, I was thinking about I feel like my parallel in my company, I've been thinking about roles, and I had someone, as I was trying to get clarity around the roles that I have in my company and what tasks they should do, I had someone give me the advice to give it a label. And I'm like, well, this doesn't feel like an important thing, but I did anyway. I put a name onto that role. And as soon as I did, there was so much that went into that naming process of like, what do I want this person to be, and the values and everything, and all these indirect things that you think about around it, that as soon as I titled it, I got so much more clarity on the tasks and on the description of who they were. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's funny how, I guess, with the different branding pieces, like the logo, the name, the different pieces, you all of them individually, you're like, is that the most important part of it? But it all is kind of adding that clarity that lets it come together and lets the rest of it just unfold in a way you didn't even know was there. And it becomes easy to just like see who you are and see what you do, even more than you could even articulate before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely having a way to connect all the pieces is so important, to look
Yeah.
at it kind of like from bird's eye view.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, to like write things down and then to like give them names or give them roles. Um, yeah, I feel like that it's just all interconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Mhm.
so let's talk a little bit about the visual brand built around a company, built around your company. You know, you where you're at now. You did all this work to come up with name. Now you have the logo. You have all of the pretty things. You know, um, we've talked a lot in the past about how I think to a lot of people in their mind, having a brand is having a pretty logo.
Mm.
And that's a piece of the branding process, but this journey that you're describing with getting to the name and then getting to like the actual visual representation and how it integrates throughout all of your platforms and all of your company, that journey is so much of what branding is that I feel like people don't always know. And that's what I see you do. That's what you did with MOCA, with my company. That's what you do with your clients, is kind of walk them through this journey of like self-discovery and clarity in their company and their values. Can you just speak a little bit to that process with you, and maybe kind of that process with your clients also, and what branding means to you?
Yeah. Well, oddly enough, I feel like the process that we now have in place for branding actually started off as something that was I kind of did selfishly. And what I mean by that is that I needed a way to create better designs for clients, and I needed a way to gather information and to really understand what my clients were looking for and what they were trying to accomplish, um, so that I didn't have to do as many revisions. I could be more like, you could like nail concepts right out of the gate. It created trust with my clients. It created better designs for us, and then it just generally created a better outcome. So that's actually where that branding process stemmed from. It actually stemmed from like, I want to create these really good results. I don't want to get stuck in revisions. I want to make sure that we have this trust and collaboration throughout a process, or throughout a project. And that's really where it stemmed from. So to answer your question, what do I think a brand is? That I don't know why I have such a hard time answering a question, but like I honestly feel like a brand is like it's an experience of, now we work with service providers, so I'm going to use service providers as my example, but I really feel like it's the experience someone has with your services and working, whether it's with you, your team. It's just like it's the experience, it's how they remember you, it's your reputation. So it's really this like big, kind of abstract thing, and you don't necessarily control it. You can do as much as you can to influence other people's perceptions of your services and what you're offering. Um, but ultimately, it's kind of what they're saying about you, not necessarily what you are saying about your services. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as far as the client experience of you and the brand
Mhm.
that's created from that, I feel like cohesion feels so important for me that
Yeah.
as much as the parts that you get to control, that you're putting out something consistent to people and authentic to people. And I feel like that is a lot of the value that I got from the branding process that I did with you is I know how to talk about myself and I know how to do things that are aligned with my brand. And so I get to kind of show up for someone and they know who I am. Like it feels like a solid, tangible, I can connect with this person because the things I'm putting out aren't like whatever I'm feeling for the day or whatever caught my attention, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get to kind of like fully step into me and actually represent myself that way.
Yeah, and that's actually the feedback that we get from a lot of our clients is that it's not once they go through the branding process with us, yes, they're excited about their logos and their colors and their fonts and having these guidelines for like how to look professional and look put together. Um, but they honestly are usually more excited about the clarity they get because they're guided through like asking questions and coming up with answers. Um, and you can do those in a questionnaire. Like questionnaires are great, but I think I always laugh because I get people to fill out a questionnaire first, and then I ask them very similar questions in our discovery calls, and the answers aren't always the same. And so like quite often we're reading between the lines in a conversation. Um, and we're really digging into like, well, why is that important? Because we get these things like value lists where people talk about things like integrity and honesty and all of these great like kind of buzzwords, generic things. And the question's always like, well, why is that important? And what does that look like in action in your business? Like what does that look like in your day-to-day operations? And so I think going through the process of like, what are your values or like, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you helping people? Like, what problems are you helping people solve? Who are the clients that you want to work with? What makes you different from competitors in your space? Like all of those questions lead you to having this like, oh, this is what we do. This is who we do it for. And this is how we're different from other people. And
Yeah.
then we get to take that one step further and we get to talk about, okay, well, now how do we want that to look like in terms of your visual identity? um, which is then we create a language around that. So like, what words are you going to use to describe your brand so that if you are working with, a virtual assistant, business, like other business service providers, digital marketing agencies, designers, you can actually be like, this is our vibe, like
Yeah.
this is what we're looking to present to the world. And when you have language around that, again, it makes it so easy, and it makes it easy even if you're say like creating social content. Even for me, like I get to go through that and be like, does does this feel, like does this feel aligned with these words that we've chosen and with the
Hmm.
descriptions that we've chosen and with our mission, with our purpose? Does it is it going to serve the audience that we've set out to serve? Um,
Yeah.
it's a really good filter.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I couldn't agree more about just the value of going through the process. And I want to throw out a little testament to you and the work you do here because I got to go through this with you. And I think it is valuable for anyone to go through this process. The fact that you led yourself through this process, I think it's very impressive. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But for most of us, that is a really hard thing to do. Like I know my business, obviously. I know myself, obviously, but you don't ask yourself the same questions. You don't even, it doesn't even occur to you to ask the questions that you asked me during this process. And to have you kind of guide through with the way that the questions that you ask, the way that you listen, the way that you can kind of interpret and visualize things that I'm trying to get at and can't quite get at, I can kind of deliver these abstract feelings and ideas to you, and you could kind of draw them in and turn them into something and pull clarity out of me. And to have like a guide and a partner in that process was just, it made it so much easier. And again, like just really so surprised and so happy at the clarity that comes out of that. And I mean, it's just been like fundamental for my business moving forward that with everything I do, like you're saying, with social media, with my sales conversations, with anything that I do, I'm returning to think about the clarity that I got with that brand development and checking in. And it has kept me from so many shiny objects that could have pulled me in different ways, you know, to just like stay centered on that and
Yeah.
stay authentic in my company. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing. Oh, that makes my heart go happy.
So tell me a little bit, Jodi, about this process, going through this yourself. What have you seen and felt since you have come up with this name and this new brand? What's it doing for you?
Well, I feel very excited. I'm a simple human, so I am so excited. Like I just want to get all the merch and like I just want to share it. I think that's the big thing is like it's given me it's re-energized me, A. And B, it's given me that clarity. So like even just like hyper focusing in terms of like who we want to serve and just like really putting our flag in the ground about this is who we serve. It doesn't mean that we can't serve people outside of that. It's just like we want it to be really, really obvious that we serve health and wellness business owners.
Yeah.
They're our favorite. Um, what was it? What was the rest of the question? I feel like I need to be recentered here
Just what
before I
you're
got a
feeling
tangent.
from it and what you're
But anyway,
excited about, what it's done for you. Yep.
yeah. The other thing too is it's just allowed me to start sharing my team as well. So being able to go on like social media and being
Yeah.
like, hey, here we have a team too. Just being able to showcase them a bit more. I think my wise friend, wink wink, has also talked about, creating roles for my own team members as well. And so like that, I think kind of the next step is creating some of these more like clarified roles, introducing team members as well. I think that's been something that's come up for me recently. Is like part of my vision is to be this tight knit little team. But all of us working remotely now. Obviously, Krista and I, we live in the same house. We share an office, so it's kind of hard not to be tight knit. But when we do bring on these other team members and our other like referral partners and things like that, that communication is so important that I realize I'm like, okay, well, communications are a huge value for us. And when I say communication, I mean like good communication. So like I like to over communicate. We communicate like kindly, um, making sure that everyone knows where the other person's at. So that you're not guessing, you're not left in the dark. Everyone knows what their role is, what their tasks are, what their responsibilities are. And we expect the same thing from our clients too. So looking at like my own like team roles, I was like, we should probably have like jump on a call and like have all of us in the same room, things like that. Having this brand now, I get to like take that and be like, okay, how do we want to create more of like a culture with the new brand or under the new brand name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's all so exciting. And I feel like this energized in your business mode.
yeah,
I've hit different points where you get in that phase and you get energy for the day-to-day things in the company, like the tasks you have to do and talking to the clients, and you're excited to tell them and you're excited about the work you're doing. But then also this advancement, development, bigger picture where you're building your company culture and working with your roles. And like it's hard sometimes in the day to day to make room for that and have capacity for that type of thing. And I find when you're really excited about your brand in this kind of process, it's like, try and stop me from doing all this development stuff. I'm so excited. I'm going to spend
yeah,
all my time here and do all the things, which is so fun phase.
yeah. Like I literally feel like I need to have better boundaries on work currently. And I'm like, I need to leave the office at this time and have an activity to go do. Otherwise, I could sink myself into, we need a new website.
Yep.
The caricature that has a terrible kitchen. Our website's not done. I launched it and was like, I want to get feedback. I want to get feedback fast, the new brand, and then we're going to roll it into a website. So I'm really going into it with like a progress over perfection attitude, really trying to like get quick feedback on what we're doing so that we can take it and roll it into maybe new services or maybe into our website, like looking for language, just seeing how it's like seeing how it's landing with people. That way we get more clarity and we get to develop things based on our audience.
Like that.
Not just like living in my head and, paralysis by analysis
Yeah,
with
that's
the new
very,
branding, trying to make things perfect before rolling it out and
yes.
really pushing it out.
Yeah, it's a very thoughtful, trusting, collaborative process. I really like the approach of getting the brand out there. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And little side note about you talking about needing to prioritize taking time off and ending your day and all of that kind of stuff. I think one note about that is that as much as we may be energized by our businesses, both of us have worked the work-life balance into our brand. It's a part of our brand that
Yes.
we work a certain way and that life is a part of what we do, and that's why we work. And so I think that for both of us, I've seen our actual brand be a reminder of work is important and fun, and also not work is important and fun. And it's nice
Yes.
to have that just built right into your company as a reminder.
Yes, it is. Because if you're not creating some sort of a balance, then obviously you're not actually living like aligned with your brand, right? Or
Mhm.
like aligned with your business model,
Yeah,
which is it's quite humbling
yeah.
when that's what you like. And I'm sure for you too, is like when that's what you're striving to help other people do, and helping them to like live and work with purpose, and with some of that balance. When you don't have that balance, it feels really misaligned, right?
I
Like
need to do
in
this. Yeah.
multiple ways, personally and professionally. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations on
Thank
your
you.
new brand. Very exciting. I feel like it fits you so well, and I'm excited to see what it leads you into next.
Me too. I feel
So,
like there's just so many possibilities.
absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Jodi.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jess.